I'll go through it once more.
You certainly are thorough.
Nothing must go wrong.
All right. We get to the church just before midnight. I carry the bomb in my satchel, with the fuse separate.
Once through the graveyard, you can prime the bomb.
What if there's a full moon?
There won't be. That's why I chose tonight for your adventure.
You've planned this very carefully.
I plan everything to the last detail.
So, we put the bomb by the walled-up doorway of the old charnel house.
Exactly where I showed you. No deviation whatsoever.
It's all right. I know. We light the fuse, and a moment later, bang!
But Shakespeare's memorial must be unharmed.
It will be. Not that I understand why you're so fond of that awful thing.
Because, my dear, I'm a lover of Shakespeare. You know that.
Oh, yes. I certainly do. I can't see a thing, Maisie. No. And no one can see us. All according to plan. Give me the satchel. With pleasure. I was terrified it would explode. Nothing can explode until I've put the fuse in. There. We just lay it by the door. Light the blue touch paper. And run as fast as we can. Oh, Maisie! Oh, what have we done? We've struck another blow for the suffragette movement. And we've done a friend a good turn at the same time. What friend? Just someone who gave us a helping hand. I promised not to mention his name. His name? A man? But don't worry, Moya. No one will ever know he helped us. But I will, Maisie. I'll know.
The Ingenious Mind of Mr. Rigby Lacksome. Dramatized from the story by Ernest Brammer by Sue Rodwell. With Simon Callow as Max Carrados and Lionel Jeffries as Parkinson.
Attempt to blow up Stratford-on-Avon Church. Suffragettes' latest outrage.
Most resourceful.
Shocking, I call it, sir.
And your shy little niece is involved in some way, Parkinson.
Moya, shy. Not shy, sir. Not anymore.
Really?
Since you last met her, she's been had up twice for brawling, and if her mother hadn't caught the influenza in the nick of time, Moya meant to chain herself to the minute hand of Big Ben.
To prove that women are moving with the times, I suppose. Fine spirit.
Her mother's sick with worry. That's my youngest sister. Married well. Widow now.
Married a bank manager, I seem to recall.
She did. Gave Moya a good education, and this is what the girl comes to. It's a pretty grey outlook if she's an example of the mothers of the coming generation.
Read the story to me, will you, Parkinson? My fingers can manage to decipher the headlines, but really the smaller type is beyond me today.
Shortly after midnight, a determined attempt was made to wreck part of Holy Trinity Church, Stratford-on-Avon, by means of a bomb. Residents throughout the town were woken by a loud explosion. Investigation showed that an attack had been made on the church, bringing down part of a wall and breaking a stained glass window. A letter sent to this newspaper reveals that the attack was carried out on behalf of the Women's Suffrage League.
Most enterprising. Go on.
The explosion took place within a few feet of Shakespeare's monument, but it is untouched.
How fortuitous.
And it is hoped that the damage can be made good without further harm being caused to this historic site.
What, I wonder, was their true object?
To make trouble. That's all. My sister doesn't know if she's coming or going with the girl.
But how can I help?
Moira's still in Stratford, sharing a cottage with one of her so-called friends. I know she was involved in some way. I thought if you could talk to her.
Play the father? I hardly think so, Parkinson.
She's got him with a bad lot, but she thinks the world of you. Only the other day she said that if she was put to set this house on fire, she wouldn't.
How gratifying.
She said she'd get someone else to do it. If you could talk to her, I know she'd listen to you.
I wonder what these friends are really up to. Very well, Parkinson. Telegraph your niece that we'll be arriving at Stratford this afternoon. If we hurry, we can catch the next train from Paddington.
The Spectator, Blackwell's, and of course the Pall Mall Gazette.
Thank you, Parkinson.
I booked a seat in the dining car for 2 o'clock.
Excellent. Is there anything further about the attack in the Gazette?
Nothing I can see. Oh, yes. Something in the stop press.
News of an arrest?
No. Mr. Rigby Lacksome, a representative Hiram S. Nog, the American millionaire and Shakespearean enthusiast who happens to be staying in Stratford-on-Avon, communicated with Mr. Nog as soon as news of the outrage reached him. As a result of this timely intervention, Mr. Nog has undertaken to defray the entire cost of repairs. Work will be put in hand immediately by his representative, the church, meanwhile, being closed to the public.
How very generous of Hiram S. How lucky that Mr. Lacksome should be on the spot. How very lucky indeed.
Pull that tarpaulin round. It's meant to cover the hole, not frame it. That's it. Now, to mind those stones, you'll bring the wall down. Barble, will you keep your men in order? This isn't a sewer you're repairing. This is the last resting place of a great man.
Mr. Rigby Lacksome, I presume.
I would think so, sir.
A Boston man with the tang of something else. Describe the scene, Parkinson.
Masonry everywhere. Bricks, wheelbarrows, planks. Men tramping mud all over the graveyard.
Dust, mortar, and the faintest whiff of sulphur still lingering in the air.
Where the hole in the wall must be, there's a ruddy great tarpaulin covering it up.
To keep out prying eyes?
Certainly do that, sir.
All right, Barble, you may as well pack up for the day. I want you and your men back here first thing tomorrow morning. First thing.
Well, Parkinson, I think it's time I took tea with your delightful niece. A charming cottage.
Well, how do you know? I mean...
Oh, the smell of polish, roses on the table, a comfortable chair. And I'm sure your taste in decoration is impeccable.
Actually, Maisie chose the wallpaper. It's her cottage. She's a friend. I know you don't quite approve of us, Mr. Carrados, but that's only because you've never really thought it out.
Us?
The Women's Suffrage League. No one but the very young or the very stupid are actually hostile.
Indeed. I suppose this was some of your work.
Oh, headline news in the Gazette. Well, the Times only put it on page 2. Officially, I know nothing about it. Seems to have made a stir.
You came within an ace of making a much greater stir. I wonder how your friends came to miss Shakespeare's monument.
Perhaps they didn't want to hit it.
I would have thought they'd blow up Shakespeare himself if it kept them in the limelight.
Mr. Carrados, do you think the man who created Portia would object in the least to having that smug, fat-headed image of a retired pork butcher blown to pieces if it would help get women the vote?
I think he'd recommend you to make better bombs. Or do you think that's a skill reserved to men?
All I can tell you is it went according to plan. I believe. Oh, that must be Maisie.
Oh, I'd like to meet Maisie.
Oh, would you?
If I see another policeman, I'll... Sorry, Moira. I didn't know you had a visitor.
Maisie Robinson, Mr. Max Carrados.
Miss Robinson.
You're the man Moira's told me all about.
Has she?
She certainly has. As clever as a dozen Sherlock Holmes. So she says. Well, can't stop now. Have to write my report on this terrible outrage at the church. Bye.
Maisie's a journalist. Writes for the League's magazines.
Does she indeed?
Yes. Mr. Carrados, I may not be completely satisfied myself with all the ins and outs of this affair, but you can tell my uncle he really has nothing to worry about. I promise you.
Mr. Carrados, how nice to see you again. You're cute.
I'm not subscribing to the general principle, Parkinson, but your niece ought to have the vote.
She tends to make a good impression, sir.
If I could see, no doubt I'd be charmed by her looks. As it is, her voice tells me so much more, not learning more than the fond eye doth teach, which pries not to the interior.
The Merchant, Act 2, Scene 9.
She knows more about this business than I think she cares to say. If I'm to help her, I must know whether Rigby Lacksome is truly connected to the case. But will she tell me?
Max Carrados.
Should I know the man?
I think you should be afraid of him.
I mean to finish this business, and I don't intend to let anyone stop me. Not anyone.
It's so peaceful here.
When churches aren't being blown up.
Hardly that. There was very little damage, really.
Enough to keep Mr. Lacksome occupied.
Oh, the swans are lovely. Oh, there are 3. No, there are 4. One's just swimming up from the reeds. And there's a boy fishing from Copton Bridge.
And no doubt Ophelia is floating gently downstream.
You asked me to show you Stratford.
I did indeed. Perhaps we should visit the churchyard.
Oh, no, there's so much to see. And Hathaway's cottage, the hall, and Mason's court.
I know something of Rigby Lacksome.
Indeed.
We connect as a Shakespeareana, form a tight circle. One hears things.
You're a collector?
Oh, yes, in a small way.
Well, then I'm sure you know Stratford very well.
Seems a very great coincidence that Lacksome should have been on hand when the bomb exploded.
Yes, coincidence.
Then coincidence is simply the meeting of 2 straight lines. And they, we all know, can never enclose a space.
I wish I knew what that meant. It sounds very clever.
It means I do not believe in coincidence.
Mr. Carrados, I wish...
It would be a pity if it was discovered that the suffragette movement had been used by a man for his own ends.
Why should that be discovered?
If his continued activities here should draw the attention of the police, then nothing can be hushed up.
I can tell you nothing.
If it remained up to me, there would be no prosecution. That I could promise.
No prosecution. I know who was involved, but not why he was. And that disturbs me terribly, Mr. Carrados. I think the quote you want is Julius Caesar, Act 1, Scene 2. Brutus's third speech.
Act 1, Scene 2.
Yes.
I am not gamesome. I do lack some part of that quick spirit that is in Antony. Let me not...
That will do, Parkinson. Your niece is a born conspirator.
I'm sure she'd be very pleased to hear you say that, sir.
I do lack some part. In 15th century Italy, she'd have been up to her neck in some cloak and dagger party. In these prosaic days, she has to be a militant suffragette. Well, that settles it.
It does?
Lacksome's our man, all right. But what exactly is he up to?
No good stuff.
Quite. He's made it his business, at no little risk to himself,
and others,
to gain privileged access to Stratford-on-Avon Church under unique conditions. The church and grounds are closed against further militant attacks. A policeman at every gate. The portions under repair are screened off as he requires, and there's no reason to suppose he's not introduced workmen of his own selecting who will carry out his own wishes. Is that a fair summation of the facts?
Very fair.
Young Rigby is hard at work inside that church. And I think I know what he's doing.
You do, sir?
If I'm right, it would lick creation. And in the normal course of events, I'd leave him to it. I'm rarely stirred by public spirit to interfere. On the other hand, I can never resist a mystery, as you know, Parkinson.
I do indeed.
In this case, there's another factor to consider. Your delightful niece. She's tied up in Lacksome's business, whether she wishes to be or not. So we must tread carefully.
If only for her mother's sake.
We must pick locks and undo chains and get inside that church tonight, under cover of darkness. That doesn't pose any problems for you, does it, Parkinson?
Of course not, sir.
There we are, sir. Good man. What secrets lie within? Have you got the water?
Aye.
Then light the candle. Let's see what there is to see.
Oh, what a sham.
Vast sin-concealing chaos. Nurse of blame.
Would that be from the sonnet, sir?
Could be. Parkinson? Could be. Now, if I remember rightly, the grave lies this way.
No, mind your step, sir. There's a ruddy great machine in the aisle.
Is there? Describe it.
Well, it puts me in mind of a giant sink plunger more than anything.
A patent suction jack.
Is that what it is?
I'm sure of it. Can lift the heaviest weight. Lead the way, Parkinson. We must hurry. Is the gravestone visible?
Perfectly swept clear of dust.
Good friend, for Jesus' sake, forbear to dig the dust enclosed here. Blessed be the man that spares these stones, and cursed be he that moves my bones. The joints are on the stone. Are they in place?
As far as I can see, sir.
They may have been tampered with already. The water.
There you are, sir.
If I can feel where the edges are. Now, I'll spill some water on the joints. Tell me what you see. Well?
The water just runs off on the floor.
Doesn't disappear?
No, sir. I'd say the joints were still watertight. The stone's not been lifted.
Excellent. Wipe up the water. Mr. Lacksome mustn't know we've been here. What an audacious plan. Parkinson, I want you to take the first train to Paddington tomorrow morning.
Oh, we're returning to London.
You are. I want you to hunt round and see if it's possible to pick up a fairly complete human skeleton.
A skeleton?
Exactly.
I see, sir.
Let's get back to the hotel. You have an early start tomorrow.
Is your friend, Mr. Carrados, leaving? Well, he's not particularly my friend.
I thought he was. Anyway, is he going back to London today?
I don't think so. Well, he can't be. I'm lunching with him.
He's certainly keeping you occupied.
Why did you think he was leaving?
I saw him and your uncle in a cab on their way to the station.
Are you watching him?
Of course not. Why on earth would I?
Telegraph me if you have any success.
Yes, sir. And what about the price?
There won't be any price. I don't propose to go to the length of buying one. You needn't let that out. Just talk to anyone who seems to have anything to say.
Right you are, sir.
I want to cut across a similar inquiry, successful or unsuccessful, made in the last few weeks. Anyone who's been asked for another skeleton so recently is sure to mention it.
Oh, I can think of one or two old pals who might oblige with a body of some sort.
No, thank you, Parkinson. I don't want you to use any inside knowledge your colourful past might give you. But to search as a stranger would. If your inquiries lead you into the darker alleys and byways of the capital, so be it. I suggest you begin at Miss Poppington's surprising establishment in Putney High Street. She, after all, advertises widely that she can obtain anything.
had some odd requests in my time, but a skeleton?
Not something you've been asked for before?
Never, I'm glad to say. I'm afraid I don't keep them. Have you tried Madame Tussauds, perhaps?
Madame Tussauds?
Never know what they get up to.
Sorry, no skeleton, but I've got a moth-eaten Charles I you could have.
I don't think so.
Can't help, I'm afraid. Why don't you try a hospital? St. George's is the nearest.
We like to keep our patients alive, Mr. Parkinson. Why don't you inquire at the Lost Property Office at London Bridge? You never know what people leave on buses.
Skeleton? No. Got a gorilla. Stuffed. And someone once left a tailor's dummy on the Streatham bus. But no skeletons. You could try that toy merchant down near Aldgate Pump.
Aldgate Pump.
No, sorry, can't help. Certainly not.
No, sorry, can't help.
No, sorry.
No, sorry.
Can't help.
Can't help.
Certainly not.
Certainly not.
Certainly not.
A skeleton?
Yeah.
Who sent you then?
A gentleman from Harley Street. Said you might be able to help.
Did it?
Yeah,
No names. Where you been already then?
Where haven't I been? 2 hospitals, a toy merchant, a firm of auctioneers, a phrenologist off Fleet Street, a retired conjurer, a museum in Lincoln's Inn Fields.
All right, I get the picture. Thought of digging one up for yourself?
No.
You want it all above board then? Right, what about the big West End stores? Tried any of them yet?
Do you think it'd do any good?
Why not give it a go? There's Whiteley's up Bayswater way. My missus says they've got just about everything she can think of. And she's not an easy one to please.
Whiteley's?
Worth a go. And you might pick up a decent tie at the same time.
Can I help you, sir?
I hope so. I've got what you might call a rather unusual request. I'm taking up an interest in the human body, you see.
Indeed, sir.
Yeah, a hobby, you might say. Anatomy. What I really need is a skeleton.
Skeleton?
For the drawing, you know. The bones. Do you by any chance stock such a thing?
Excuse me. Mr. Chapbeat?
Yes?
The gentleman has a query.
Can I help you, sir?
I was just telling your colleague that... Oh, she's gone.
If you'd like to tell me, sir.
Yes. Well, I've got rather an odd request, as you might say. I'm by way of taking up an interest in the workings of the human body, and what I need for that is a skeleton. For the drawing. And I wondered if you'd stock such a thing.
I see. Excuse me, sir. Mr. Note...
Well, can't you...
Mr. Note will be able to help you, sir, if you'll excuse me.
I might as well have got the ruddy thing printed out.
Can I be of assistance, sir?
Yeah, I'm taking up a hot... I want a skeleton. Do you sell them?
How curious.
You don't.
Indeed, we do, sir. Occasionally. It's just that we had a similar inquiry only last week. One can go years without selling a skeleton, and then 2 at once. Most unexpected.
Oh, well, I never. This inquirer, he'd be a scientific sort, would he? Like myself?
An American. A singular idea. Theory that the English and American races, starting from a common stock, are diverging structurally. Wanted an English skeleton to demonstrate it by.
Ah, sounds like a chap I know. Lacksome, sort of confidential secretary to that American millionaire, Nog.
That is the gentleman. Do you know him?
You could say we have an interest in common.
A telegram from your uncle, I think. Perhaps you read it to me.
Of course. On the first part's in Latin.
So good for Parkinson. He must have looked it up.
Habeas corpus ad prosequendum. Stop. Returning on next train. Stop. Parkinson. What does it mean?
It means our adventure is almost at an end.
Whiteleys of Bayswater were most obliging to Mr. Lacksome.
I'm sure they were, and paid well.
Seems they made a proper travelling box for his purchase.
Of course they did.
Plenty of packaging, well sealed. Seems he was worried about the customs, so they even provided him with a special custom declaration form. Went so far as to have a word with the Cunard Company to make sure there was no fuss made on the ship. No need to open the box.
Most obliging of them.
That's what I thought.
Come along, Parkinson. We must visit the church again.
In daylight? Will Mr. Lacksome object?
Oh, he's quite finished with Holy Trinity. All repaired and swept and tidied up. I think Mr. Lacksome intends to be on the last train to London this evening and on the Southampton boat to New York by dawn. Have you got the water, Parkinson?
Right here, sir.
If you could apply a little to the joint without attracting attention.
Mr. Carrados.
Ah.
And Moya's uncle. How nice. I thought you'd returned to London, Mr. Parkinson.
What gave you that idea, miss?
Oh, heaven knows.
But we will be returning to town before too long.
You've had enough of Stratford?
No, but our little mystery is almost ended. Parkinson, be careful with that water.
Sorry. I'm terribly sorry, miss. Are you wet?
No, but the floor is.
Is it really? Still?
Moya was right. You are a clever man.
The water's quite warm, sir. Seep right through the joints.
Yes. We must leave you, Miss Robinson. We have a train to catch and so much to do beforehand.
Goodbye, Mr. Carrados. I don't think we'll be meeting again.
I'm sure of it. This will do quite nicely. Come back as we reach Westbourne Park, Parkinson. A most civilized form of travel, don't you think, sir? The train.
I guess so.
On a long journey, a man can sit back in comfort and consider.
Consider what?
Whatever might be on his conscience.
Those of us with a clear conscience can simply read the newspaper.
Oh, what may man within him hide, though angel on the outward side? Measure for measure.
I know the quote, sir.
Forgive me. Of course, you're a lover of Shakespeare.
Now, how would you know that?
You've been visiting Stratford-on-Avon. It naturally follows.
Oh, yes, of course.
Although in your case, Mr. Lacksome, the love runs very deep, does it not?
You know my name?
I do.
Then you have the advantage of me, sir.
Yes.
I mean, I have no recollection of ever having seen you before.
That gives me no advantage, for I don't see you now.
What do you mean?
Simply that I'm blind.
I'm sorry to hear that.
Are you?
Of course, why shouldn't I be?
There's no question of who holds the ace, you see. If it should come to violence.
Hold on there. You cut the ice considerably quicker than I can stack it. Why violence?
One never knows. I was talking to a man about a murder quite recently, just as casually as I'm talking to you now. He became very violent.
Is that so? Well, perhaps it's your manner.
Perhaps.
Who exactly are you, sir?
I really know.
I doubt that somehow.
I should have introduced myself before. My card. Tastefully embossed, I'm assured.
Max Carrados.
Surely you knew that already.
Why should I?
I'm sure your friend Maisie has pointed me out.
Maisie, I don't think I know the lady.
I think you do.
No?
Then we'll let that rest.
I'm sorry, sir. I think you're mistaking me for some other man.
I know you for who? For what? You are the ingenious Mr. Rigby Lacksome.
Are you part of that Scotland Yard outfit?
Oh, no.
Then what's your business?
I'm just interested in things.
I see. Any particular sort of things?
Crime, in general, if it promises originality. the moment I'm curious to clear up one or two points in what I might call the mystery of the anatomical specimen.
Oh, it sounds like a three-reel thriller, all right, Mr. Carrados. What does it hinge on?
I'm afraid that it hinges on one of your own articles of luggage. A large sealed container. The guards there. The communication cord is on your side, if that's what you're looking for.
I guess you were kidding me about being blind.
I'm sure you have. Totally blind.
All right. Before we go any further, I want to know just what business this is of yours.
It's a detail of our old-fashioned judicial system that it's the duty of the merest outsider, myself, for instance, to arrest and give into custody anyone he reasonably suspects of having committed a crime.
Is that so? So how does he get on with it if he finds himself looking down the barrel of a gun?
What? Violence already? And after I'd warned you, too. But the answer to that, Mr. Lacksome, is that a blind man never knows, of course, that he is looking down the barrel of a gun.
Well, you're certainly the gelatous kind of guy I've met in a whole long time.
Gelatous? I'm not familiar with that particular Americanism.
Cool. I see, if you like.
I'm sure it would shock you immeasurably if you met an Englishman who showed traces of emotion under these or any other circumstances.
I guess it would.
You, for your part, are the most accomplished body snatcher I've met in a whole long time.
Body snatcher?
I know. You have the mortal remains of England's greatest playwright on this very train. Perhaps we can pass the time before we reach Paddington comparing notes.
Who's to say we'll both reach Paddington?
Oh, indeed.
I have the upper hand, Mr. Carrados. Can't you see that? No, of course you can't. Well, I assure you I have.
In my experience, a gunshot reverberates horribly in a train. It tends to bring people running.
There's sure to be another train passing us on the upline between here and Paddington. They make enough noise to muffle any explosion.
Another body to be disposed of.
If necessary.
I wonder when it comes to it. If you're the type.
We'll see, won't we?
We will indeed.
What, just out of interest, was your plan for me, Mr. Carrados?
That rather depended.
On what?
On you.
I don't get it.
It's quite simple. You'll find that at Westbourne Park, the train will slow down almost to nothing. There'll be a couple of plainclothes men waiting on the platform. If I show, or had shown, a white handkerchief at the window, they would step onto the footboard and take instructions. If I showed a colored handkerchief, they would know that the case had fallen through. They were not wanted.
Great. I'd no idea we were doing this for the movies. Sorry to spoil your excellent scheme. Pity it should come to this.
Indeed. And all for the sake of Hiram S. Nogg's Shakespeare maniac.
Oh, he's a maniac, all right. But no, not just for his sake.
Really?
Mr. Nogg has a niece, Sabina. She lives with him, apple of his eye.
Beauty provoketh thieves sooner than gold.
You know nothing of the facts, sir.
Then tell me.
All right. Me and Sabby. Well, I've admired her for some time past, and she returns my feelings.
Charming. But Mr. Nogg does not approve.
His secretary? Canoodling as he'd have it with his beloved niece? When he found us together, well, I was lucky not to be turned out onto the street.
I see.
Do you?
I think so.
Nogg called me into his study. Said as I was coming over to England to attend the sales, I might just as well stay here. Oh, as well as being a very rich man, he's also a very unforgiving man. I knew I had to pull a rabbit out of the hat to get back in his good books.
And a very large rabbit at that.
Yes. Nog's the sort of guy who collects Shakespeareana by the yard. If the fellow across the way has a book called Hamlet, printed way back in the Dark Ages, then Hiram has to have the same, only bigger and better and costing $100 more.
But that wouldn't do this time.
It would not. It had to be something special. A first folio, a copy of Romeo and Juliet in the author's own hand. But I didn't know where to find such a thing.
But you did know where to find the author himself, or at least his boat.
I sort of hope that train won't be passing for a while yet, not until you know the whole story.
I know a good deal already.
Do you now?
Oh, yes. Your hardest task was to get into the church without arousing suspicion, to be able to work there in peace. That's where the Women's Suffrage League came into the picture.
They sure did.
Met with one of their number, Maisie, I think. You put the plan to her.
Go on.
You'd provide the bomb if she'd plant it carefully outside the church. The monument must not be harmed. That's what first aroused my suspicion. Who would care if Shakespeare's monument were destroyed?
Nog would care.
Precisely.
And come to that, so would I.
I do believe you would. The bomb would provide you with a smoke screen behind which you could raise the stone over Shakespeare's tomb, replace his skeleton with one so kindly provided by Whiteley's at Bayswater, and once you've done your work, the suffragettes could claim their greatest coup, kidnapping the body of Shakespeare. Only you, they, and Nog would know where the body really lay. And none of you would ever tell.
And where's the harm in that?
If by some mischance the box you're taking across to America should be opened, well, what of it? Merely a skeleton purchased for the purposes of anatomical research. And you have the paperwork to prove it.
I say again, Mr. Carrados, where is the harm in that?
The upline train must be due at any moment.
Do you really think the guy who danced to the beat of Romeo and Juliet or Rosalind and Orlando would care a banana skin? What happened to his loose parts after 3 centuries if it had helped me to win Sabina?
And her not inconsiderable fortune.
Believe me, that did not come into it.
Can I believe you? I wonder. Yes, the train will be upon us. I can hear the rails singing. In other circumstances, Mr. Lacksome, I might have helped you with your crime. The mood took me. However, in these circumstances, I can't, I'm afraid.
I guess you can't.
Is this really how you want your adventure to end?
It must. How else?
Death, a necessary end, will come when it will come.
Julius Caesar, Act 2, Scene 2. I'll take the gunpowder.
Damn you to hell!
Thank you, Parkinson.
I thought it was the moment to enter the carriage, sir.
He was outside all the time?
In case I should need his assistance. I thought I had read you correctly, Mr. Lacksome, but one can never be certain.
I really thought I could go through with it.
I, on the other hand, thought otherwise.
So what now? You hand me over to your policeman at Westbourne Park? It's your duty, after all.
Alas, how few of us do our duty nowadays.
Will you?
Will I indeed? The coloured handkerchief or the white one?
The train would appear to be slowing, sir.
So it would.
The coloured one. Wave the coloured one, for pity's sake.
Unfortunately, I can't see which one that is.
Give it to me, damn you.
Now, sir.
But there's no one there. There's no one on the platform.
Dear me. Can I have dreamt that part of it?
Has it all gone according to plan, sir?
Perfectly. Scotland Yard informed me that the body has been returned to its rightful resting place with the minimum of fuss.
No one will ever know it was missing.
The government having to admit that suffragettes had a hand in stealing Shakespeare's body. No, Parkinson. No one will ever know. You can be sure of that.
I'm relieved to hear it, sir.
A satisfactory outcome for all concerned. Even Mr. Lacksome. I hear he and the no doubt charming Sabina are to be married in the spring.
Made it up with Nog, then?
Undoubtedly. True love and a substantial inheritance await Rigby in the fullness of time. Meanwhile, Whiteley's specimen lies now in a marble vault, seen only by one man. And if he is happy with what he sees, who are we to disappoint him?
Quite, sir.
And what of your niece, Parkinson? Can Moya join us for luncheon?
Oh, that's a bit difficult, sir. She's at the House of Commons just now.
Attending Parliament?
Attached to the railings.
I see.
In The Ingenious Mind of Mr. Rigby Lacksome, Simon Callow was Max Carrados and Lionel Jeffreys Parkinson. Stephen Tompkinson was Rigby Lacksome, Lindsay Baxter Moya, and Una Beeson Maisie. Miss Poppington and the assistant were played by Deirdre Morris, Chadbeat and the Waxworks and Lost Property Man by Ian Armstrong, and the Doctor, the Housebreaker and Note by Robert Oates. The music was composed by Robert Rigby. The play was dramatized from a short story by Ernest Brammer by Sue Rodwell, was produced by Stuart Richards and Michael Cameron, and directed by Alan Drury. The Ingenious Mind of Mr. Rigby Lacksome was a Mr. Punch production.